Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about Team September's last stand for a Nintendo Switch 2 reveal. So many of us thought that it might happen this month of September, that we might finally see the console. And to some extent, this is already held true, because this week we did see a leak for the Switch 2 prototype, which has since been corroborated by multiple sources that I will have linked in the description below. But what we are really waiting for is a proper official reveal by Nintendo. Can this still happen in the month of September? Well, technically, we still have a third of September left, so it is possible, but many think it's unlikely because next week is the last final full week of the month, and in this week we are seeing both Tokyo Game Show and the release for The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Is it really reasonable to expect for Nintendo to reveal the console during this period of time? Many would say no, it's unlikely. But what if I were to tell you that there is some reason to think that Switch 2 can still be revealed in this month of September, even if October at this point seems more likely? Well, I think there is, and that's what we're diving further into today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So with this week having come and gone and still no Switch 2 reveal, I do think it's safer to expect Switch 2 to not be revealed this month. Because looking at the history of major Nintendo announcements, they tend to happen in either the second or third full weeks of the month, usually in the form of a Nintendo Direct. And while sometimes things may happen towards the end, when you have something like both Tokyo Game Show and Echoes of Wisdom happening, it doesn't seem like there's really much room to reveal something like their next generation console. And there are many rumors that keep popping up about a Switch 2 reveal in October, and let's not forget that Nintendo Switch 1 was technically revealed in October of 2016. Even though we did get a report that Nintendo initially wanted to reveal it in September, they didn't. It was October. So for those that are on Team October, right now you probably gotta be feeling pretty good about yourself. Those for Team 2025 are probably starting to gain more confidence because it still hasn't happened yet. But if Nintendo has no major announcements for things in 2025 in this month, it's going to be very, very strange. Because for every single September throughout the entire Switch era, 2017 all the way up till now, there has always been some sort of major direct or multiple presentations that showcase several big things, including games coming out in the early parts of next year with actual dates. And this year, we haven't gotten anything like that in terms of published Nintendo announcements. In June, we got the announcement for Donkey Kong in January. But currently, we still haven't gotten any sort of announcement for a February or March game, and usually, we have dates for all these games by this point in the year. We should at least be getting a February game announcement in this month of September, at least based on how things have been happening over the last 7 years. But at this point, because of what's happening next week, any sort of other major Nintendo announcement seems unlikely to many. But what's also really peculiar is that Nintendo had a partner showcase, they had an Indie World, they had the Museum Direct, which were all supposedly moved up because of Switch 2, and they left September totally vacant. That point still stands, it is still odd. So if we have to wait until October, it's still going to be a bit of a head scratcher as to why Nintendo moved up all their presentations. Now you could make the argument that because Switch 2 is going to be such a big momentous moment, that they wanted to get all the announcements out of the way with a nice healthy gap in between, just so there can be a clear-cut transition here. But while that might be the case, I feel that the arguments as to why we shouldn't see a Switch 2 reveal next Echoes of Wisdom should pretty much hold the same if we're talking about Mario Party Jamboree, which is coming out in October, the 17th. And then some might argue November, because in early November we are going to see Nintendo's next financial event, perhaps that's the deadline. But Brothership comes out November 7th. So the point I'm making here is that regardless of when Nintendo decides to reveal this console, there's going to be something going on that it will arguably get in the way of. Which is why there's a considerable amount of people that just think Nintendo won't announce anything during this period of the year because of the holiday sales. But as I said in the past, we go back to when they showed off the Switch 1, they still had strong 3DS sales, they announced several 3DS bundles, they announced the Wii U bundle, they announced the NES Classic Edition, and sales are still very healthy during this period of time. Pokemon Sun and Moon came out and it had a record-breaking start. And yet with all of this going on, Nintendo still revealed the Switch 1 on October 20th of 2016. So essentially what I'm arguing is that no matter how you spin it, things are going to be weird. Maybe you might want to make the argument that since there is no February game, perhaps this is a sign that that's when Nintendo's going to finally reveal the Switch 2. And if we have to wait all the way until then, I'll say that technically it would check out because Nintendo has told us that they would do it by the end of the fiscal year. And I would say by the end is very unlikely, and I would also say revealing it in January would be very unfair to the holiday sales argument, because January is the return period. So maybe Nintendo has no game in February and they're just going to kick off their marketing in February, but that would also strongly suggest that we won't be seeing Switch 2 come out until the second half of 2025, which would go against what a lot of reports earlier this year suggested. I'm not giving up on an early 2025 release quite yet, and again, I acknowledge October as perhaps the more likely time when Switch 2 will be revealed by this point, but I still think Team September has some room for optimism here. Because history does show that in September is a major time for Nintendo news, and that still hasn't really quite happened yet. There's still technically time in the month. And looking at the history of Directs, there is something that I did notice that is interesting. The most recent Indie World Showcase plus Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase happened on August 27th. This was announced on a Monday and it happened on a Tuesday, in the final full week of the month. Something similar could happen in this month of September, where they could make an announcement on Monday and something could happen on Tuesday. Zelda doesn't come out until Thursday, so Switch 2 could take all the excitement for the beginning of the week, and Zelda could take all the excitement for the second half of the week. It's theoretically possible, and Nintendo could still reveal the console before Tokyo Game Show, which is another reason why we thought September made a lot of sense, because they could reveal the console before Tokyo Game Show, so at Tokyo Game Show, all our third parties that will be involved with Switch 2 early on can start to announce and showcase their games. And some think it would be odd for Nintendo to just ignore Tokyo Game Show altogether and then reveal the console in October. Of course, they did this back in 2016, so it's hard to say with any real confidence what they're going to do. But another interesting thing I noticed is that the Nintendo Museum Direct, which happened just a week before the Partner Showcase, was announced on the 18th, a Sunday, and happened on the 19th, a Monday. Now, I think this might be because in Japan, it was already Monday, and so that's when it was announced, and for us here in the West, the announcement was on the 18th, but the actual show was still on the 19th. There could be a really quick turnaround here, and maybe something could be announced as early as this Sunday. I would even argue that an announcement on Sunday, or technically Monday in Japan in the early morning, might make more sense because it gives just a little bit more breathing room between this hypothetical Switch 2 reveal and the release for both Echoes of Wisdom and the opening of Tokyo Game Show. And so if something like either of these scenarios were to occur, the reveal would be on the 23rd or 24th of September. And what's interesting about that, looking throughout the history of Directs, we have seen some late month Directs. We saw a Partner Showcase on the 21st earlier this year. The June Direct this year was on the 21st. In 2022, we had a Partner Mini on June 28th. And in 2021, the September Direct took place on the 23rd. So theoretically, Nintendo could still have an early week presentation showcasing the Switch 2 before Tokyo Game Show. There is some history that somewhat suggests this could happen, especially when we consider that the most recent presentations were early week presentations as opposed to the typical mid to late week presentations. And in the same week as the Partner Showcase, we did see the release for Emi the Smiling Man, so there is at least one example of a game coming out in the same week as a major presentation. And there are certainly things that have happened throughout this month of September that have helped to fuel the fire for a September reveal. One of the biggest ones was Paul Gale hearing that some type of trailer or commercial was filmed for presumably the Switch 2. And based off the timing he suggested we might see this, it would be within 1 to 6 weeks, this past week just being the first of those 6 weeks, so there's still another whole week left in September. And every following day, we get even further and further away from this very strange tease from the Call of Duty Brazil account that was suggesting or hinting at some sort of Call of Duty announcement during the Partner Showcase. That never happened. The theory is that there's going to be a Call of Duty announcement during the Switch 2 reveal. And of course, that could still be in October, but the further away this event is, the stranger this accidental tease becomes. And then we also have both Andy Robinson from Video Games Chronicle and Chris Dring from GamesIndustry.biz seemingly teasing something happening in the month of September, as we've gotten in all previous years during the Switch era. And these odd references to a Nintendo Direct were happening on the same day that we learned a whole bunch of developers were visiting Nintendo of America. Did they hear something? Maybe. But beyond all these oddities and possibilities, there's one other thing that's going on that has me still not totally abandoning Team September. And that is the return of the leaker Midori. Now, I recognize a lot of people do not like Midori, and I in no way condone all the activities that transpired in the past, but the fact of the matter is, under this identity of Ryan from the Bronx, they've been very transparent, they've apologized for things, and they showed a considerable amount of information that is compelling, that has led to many people to believe that this is indeed the real Midori, who had such a strong track record of leaks throughout the industry, including Nintendo-related things. Earlier this month, they showed off early development footage for both Crazy Taxi and Shinobi. And just recently, we got confirmation that The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom did have the codename of Edward, which Midori leaked to us earlier this year, which led us to believe that there would be a new 2D Zelda game, and that all turned out to be totally true. So there is something that Midori said at the beginning of this month. This user, Bilbo-kun, said Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever it will be called, revealed this month? Really? With an eye-rolling emoji? This was in response to Chris Dring speaking on how both himself and Andy Robinson had heard during Gamescom that some devs were hearing that there might be some sort of Switch 2 event happening in September. And Midori, or Ryan from the Bronx as they are called now, responded and said, really, with a period. This leaker, who's probably actually the same Midori, who's had the best track record out of essentially all leakers ever, has said the Switch 2 will be revealed in September. And so while it may seem weird, it may seem unlikely based off everything that's going on right now, technically there's still a third of the month left, there is still a window of opportunity for a Switch 2 to be revealed. I'm not telling you to believe it, but I'm saying that if you're on Team September, there is still room for optimism, there's still hope. You can still have your last stand arguing that it can happen. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.